6%, 330, 26.4. I mean, it's tied at 230 and 330. So that's, and then 430 is just a slight edge, 26.8%, 530, 20% there. But look at that. You got it split right there. Let me know what you think. You could go to my Twitter there at Mike NewsNOW, and you could comment, or you could just take a part in the poll. We got close to 300 votes already, and it continues, and we'll take a look at it a little bit later in the show here on NewsNOW from Fox. Thanks again for joining us here on this beautiful Thanksgiving Day. Let's start off our coverage here. We're going to go back out to our sister station, Fox 35 in Orlando, everybody. We got Regina Gonzalez doing a piece here on really just the whole history of Thanksgiving and the turkey. Let's get into that right now here on NewsNOW from Fox. We're just getting warmed up here for you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us on NewsNOW from Fox on this Thanksgiving Day. I wanted to bring you a special interview regarding some facts behind the birds you will all be chowing down on today. I am joined by expert Dr. Julie Long from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, who is here to tell us all about them. How are you, Dr. Long? Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm well.
Well, let's get started right away. So first of all, can you really tell me, myself and the viewers, because I'm not a turkey expert, the history of the modern turkey breed?
It's actually a very interesting history, and one that folks probably don't fully appreciate or realize. So everybody knows that we have wild turkeys running around the countryside. And many folks probably think that those are where our modern day turkeys came from, when in fact, the history of the domesticated turkey actually dates back to America. The birds were domesticated there, and when the Spanish conquerors came over in the 16th century, they saw these big, beautiful birds. And at that time in Europe, they weren't eating anything that was as big as a turkey. So when they saw these birds, they took them back to Europe. And during the next 100 years, it was actually the Europeans who developed a lot of different turkey breeds. And when the Pilgrims came over in 1600 and settled at Jamestown, they brought domesticated turkeys with them on their ships. So when they landed on the shores and they saw these wild turkeys, it was quite a shock, because the turkeys that they knew were the ones that they had grown in Europe.
Very interesting. Now, when did we start eating turkeys, specifically even for the Thanksgiving holiday?
So that did start. Eating turkeys for the Thanksgiving holiday did start. The birds were, as I said, the birds were in the wild, and most likely the original birds that folks were using for the Thanksgiving dinner derived from the European breeds. However, as time progressed, there were turkey breeds that were developed in the United States, which did incorporate some of the wild turkeys into those breeds. So eventually it did make it into our food supply, but it didn't start that way.
Gotcha. Now, can we differentiate between the fact and fiction regarding wild and domesticated turkeys? Are they the same? Are they different? Talk to me about that.
So genetically, technically speaking, they are the same because they all come from the same species. So the species is Milagros gallopavo. Interestingly, gallopavo is Latin for the term chicken peacock. So that's what it actually means as a species name. The birds are very different when you would look at a wild turkey next to a commercial turkey, because a domesticated bird is often going to look different from the wild bird. Some of the most different features that we notice are the coloration of the bird. So the commercial birds are all white. Their feathers are completely white. Whereas if anyone has seen a turkey in the wild, you know that they have very fancy colored plumage. Wild turkeys also can fly. They don't fly long distances, but they can fly pretty fast. And at night they do roost in trees. So there are often anecdotes of people who come upon a group of turkeys who get startled and fly up. They're not very good flyers because they're such big birds. The commercial birds, however, because of their larger stature, they do not fly. So that is one difference between the birds. Another difference would be, I mentioned feather color. Most folks don't understand that when there are colored feathers, there's a pigment at the bottom of the feather. So if someone were to dress a wild bird and you pluck the bird, you might have dark spots on the meat. And that's simply because there's a little bit of pigment left over from the feather. Nothing is wrong with the meat. However, dark spots could be a little unsettling to folks when they go to pick up that meat at the supermarket. So by having an all white bird, there's no pigment, therefore there's no discoloration of the skin at all. And that's primarily the reason that our birds all have white feathers.
Wow. Now, speaking of, you mentioned people cutting into the meat, eating turkey. There's definitely been some news about the demand for smaller turkeys this year due to COVID-19 keeping large gatherings from happening. So are there smaller breeds compared to bigger breeds? I see that you know a lot about the Beltsville small white breed. So can you discuss that a little?
Certainly. The history behind the Beltsville small white is also very interesting. Back in the 1930s, there actually were surveys conducted of the households because most of the turkeys that were being consumed at that time were medium-sized to large birds, and they were pretty skinny. They didn't have a lot of meat on the bird. So there was an interest for a smaller bird that could actually fit into an apartment-sized refrigerator or oven that had more meat on it. And so researchers at the USDA began to develop this breed. They started in 1934 at the Beltsville Agricultural Research Center. And within a couple of years, they crossed 6 different breeds of turkeys to come up with the Beltsville small white. It's a very small bird. The females weigh anywhere between 8 to 10 pounds. The males, which are called toms, they weigh anywhere between 14 to 17 pounds, which is much smaller than a wild bird or even the birds that we eat on Thanksgiving. So these birds being so small, they took off in popularity. They actually were one of the few birds that were in the grocery stores. They actually said Beltsville turkey on the label, which is something pretty interesting because most other turkey breeds don't show up on the label of the bird in the grocery store. So these birds were very popular for about a decade. And then with the popularity of turkey also grew the popularity of the restaurant trade. And so, you know, restaurants and hotels, folks that were serving turkey were, they wanted to get more slices out of the breast meat. And so there was another breed that was developed called the broad-breasted white. And that bird is much bigger. That's the bird that we eat today. And when that bird was developed in the 1960s, the Beltsville small white, unfortunately, the demand for that waned. And that breed actually is considered to be very rare. There are only 2 or 3 populations of the birds in the United States that we can feel fairly confident relate back to the original breed. So it's interesting in this day and age that now we might be thinking again about smaller birds because that is a bird which does fill that niche. It's a smaller bird, but it still has a lot of meat for a smaller family gathering.
So if families are eating and buying smaller turkeys, are they technically eating a Beltsville white breed?
No, they're actually not, because that bird is not in the commercial sector at this time. So the way the industry has adjusted for being able to have smaller birds would be to simply have a younger age at market because the bird would be smaller at that time. So that would be how we would have smaller birds available for Thanksgiving.
Got you. Now, you mentioned turkeys in stores. Going off of this thought, the demand just for turkeys around the nation in general, eating them, and then Thanksgiving. Talk to me about the reproduction of turkeys.
That's also something which most people don't realize. So the birds that we currently consume for Thanksgiving, everybody knows that the favorite part of the bird would be that large, beautiful breast meat, right? Unfortunately, the size of that actually interferes with normal reproduction in turkeys. So the turkeys are produced by a process known as artificial insemination. And that's how all of our turkeys in the commercial industry are produced.
Wow. Now, going off of that, the turkey genome, people can joke around and say a turkey is a big chicken. Explain the turkey genome to us.
Sure. So I actually often like to say that a turkey is definitely not a big chicken because there are substantial differences in the physiology and habits of the two birds. So with the advent of sequencing genomes for major agricultural species, the chicken was actually one of the first ones where the genome sequence was developed. The turkey did not actually come along until 2010, where the USDA, in collaboration with Virginia Polytech and University of Maryland, collaborative effort, we sequenced the turkey genome, which gives us valuable genetic resources for research and being able to develop a better bird for the industry. So knowing what the genetic code is of the turkey is going to help us improve the bird quite a bit.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for these incredible facts, Dr. Long. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up?
I just wish everybody happy and safe.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Hey, that was interesting. Didn't know anything about that. That's one of the great things here about News Now from Fox. We show you some long-form interviews as well. We like that. I mean, we don't just show you a soundbite or, 40 seconds of a story. We show you the whole interview. That's cool. You get to see a little history lesson here as well, so we appreciate that. Thanks again to our sister station, Fox 35 in Orlando, for filing that report there. We're going to take a quick break for some of you here on News Now from Fox. Stay right here with us on this Thanksgiving special. When we come back, we'll continue to have the holiday season vibes all day.
You're watching Good Day Orlando.